My name is Shonda, and I'm a High Council member of Peacemaker Society. I have with me Marcel of the family Bissett, and he is one of Peacemaker Society's 3 co-founding members. We're really excited to be here this evening to talk about or present a workshop on what is a peace officer. This workshop will attempt to be an explanation of the difference between peace officers and Act and Statute enforcement officers. We'll explain how this information affects you as a human being, what your rights are when you're approached by them, and one of Peacemaker Society's unique concepts for educating not only people but also people that are in this field of employment in particular. For the purposes of this workshop, we'll be exploring peace officers in all forms. By that I mean we'll be including police, downtown biz patrol, the new Winnipeg Police Service cadets, and all forms of Act and Statute enforcement. So that would include possibly even parking authority, census takers, anyone who's trying to enforce acts and statutes on you. We're going to close our speaking portion with a short video-audio presentation. The video is really not as important as the audio. It's just some pictures to keep you occupied while you're listening. But it's going to explore how Peacemaker Society proactively interacts with these officers in a lawful way to stand up for human rights, and after that we'll open it up to discussion and questions, and Marcel will take over at that point in time. Many police are not aware that they're daily walking back and forth between 2 roles. First is the role of peace officer, enforcing the law, and second is the role of Act and Statute enforcement officer, enforcing acts and statutes. To better understand this, let's take a look at the difference between laws and acts and statutes. Laws pertain to crimes, and they apply to flesh and blood human beings. Black's Law Dictionary defines crime as an action that makes the law, or an action that the law makes punishable. Although crime is sometimes viewed very broadly as the equivalent of antisocial, immoral, or even sinful behavior, or as a violation of any important group standard, no act is legally a crime unless it's prohibited by law. Under natural law and common law, the law of the land, a crime is anything that acts against life, liberty, and property of others, or the act of committing fraud. Acts and statutes, on the other hand, are corporate rules and refer to legality. They apply to corporations and corporate bodies or legal persons. In the book Brief Making and the Use of Law Books, William M. Lyle describes it best when he says, "Any enactment to which the state gives the force of law is a statute." Black's Law Dictionary defines statutes for us as a law passed by a legislative body, specifically legislation enacted by legislatures, administrative boards, and municipal courts. And it tells us that the term act is interchangeable as a synonym. Legislatures, administrative boards, and municipal courts are all corporate entities, and they're under the jurisdiction of the Uniform Commercial Code, or maritime law. UCC is the law that governs commercial transactions, secure transactions, and negotiable instruments. It's the law of money. This is the law of the water and admiralty law. It was never really designed to be applied to human beings. So why then, when we taking on the role of Act and Statute enforcement officers, police enforce acts and statutes on people who have no idea what these are and how they apply to them, and then they bully those that they arrest into giving statements by delaying due process. Acts and statutes do not have the force of law over human being who understands their unalienable human rights of the land. This means that the police do not even have the right to ask for your name unless they witness you committing an indictable offense. For those unfamiliar with this distinguishing difference between lawfulness and legality, you might be asking yourselves how then peace officers believe that they're justified in enforcing acts and statutes on human beings if they don't apply to human beings. How can it be that we have the full force of the law brought down on us for things like a traffic violation, an income tax irregularity, catching too many fish, refusing to fill out the census? These offenses do not do any harm to another human being, and they in no way violate any individual's fundamental rights and freedoms. Part of the reason that police act on you for these things is that there are two persons identified in law. These are the natural person and the artificial person. A natural person is defined as a human being that has a capacity for rights and duties. By capacity, they mean the ability, not the obligation. It refers to you, the flesh and blood human being, come to this earth with a living soul and with the responsibility to respect other life. Your unalienable rights are for life, liberty, and property, and to respect those of the other human beings on this planet, our home. An artificial human being, or an artificial person, is defined as a legal entity, not a human being, recognized as a person in the law to whom legal rights and duties may attach, a body corporate. Sometimes an artificial person may be referred to as a corporation. If you hear us say, well, we're all corporations, but that doesn't always mean the same as an incorporated company. This artificial person or body corporate is created when you're registered as government property with a certificate of live birth. You'll notice this on any piece of government issued identification. This artificial person does not have human rights. It is assigned corporate privileges. There's a lot more information about how and why that took place originally. It's available on our website, peacemakersociety.com. We have some brochures available as well for anyone who just walked in called Human Being in the Corporate Deception. That goes into a little bit more detail of how and why we were turned into incorporated entities. You can feel free to take any of that information with you. It's over there on the table.
Just not the books.
Just not the books, yeah. Yeah, so also Peacemaker Society has training on that on YouTube. We have 20 training videos available for you. So when police officers are acting in the role of act and statute enforcement officers, they're body corporates. They're enforcing act and statute regulations on your artificial person, your corporate entity. When they ask you for your name or your ID, they're contracting with you as an artificial person, a corporate entity. Once they have that contract secured, by obtaining your identity, they have the authority to act on you as an artificial person. How can you go about your life then as a human being, as opposed to this artificial corporate body, this person that they've created? How can you be free from acts and statutes to live as a human being with unalienable human rights? Well, there's 3 options available. We're going to touch on them really briefly. One option is to stay an artificial person, but have that knowledge and learn what your corporate rights and privileges are. And then you have to act on them. You need to vote. You need to hold your representatives accountable and make sure that they're helping you stand up for your corporate privileges. This option should also really learn how to hold their own property under a claim of right so that it doesn't get taken from you at any point if we were to go to war. We're deceived into giving up our inalienable rights as humans to pledge to be a corporate citizen. So we need to learn how to protect ourselves then under corporate law if you want to stay in that system. The second option is to become the citizen creditor to the corporation that is your artificial person. Sounds a little bit confusing. As we discussed previously, all acts and statutes fall under the jurisdiction of the Uniform Commercial Code, or UCC law. To become the creditor for your corporate artificial person, you would use a standard security agreement, and you would file that agreement with UCC, a UCC filing in the appropriate office, and then you would be the creditor and be able to do administrative process for your artificial person. That would allow you to sign any paperwork, and instead of that making you in contract, you reserve your rights. And that way it's not acting on you, the human being, it's acknowledging that it's your corporate person that you're doing that for them. The third option, which some people here may already be familiar with, is the ability to reclaim your unalienable rights as free men and women who live and exercise their rights on the land. There are several options regarding how to claim your God-given unalienable human rights. You can claim a child of God status, or free man on the land status. That's the one that a lot of people are familiar with. And you do this through a notice of understanding and intent and a claim of right that you issue to the government, just saying this is how I understand that it is, and I'm claiming the right to be a free human being living in the Dominion of Canada. You can also do an individual declaration, provided you're born in Canada. You can do an individual declaration of sovereign rights held on the land and Indigenous power. If you're born here, you're an Indigenous person to Canada, and you can claim your sovereign rights. Ron Paul and others have done that successfully in the US. We have a very similar system here, so we're in the process of finding out exactly how to make that happen. This means you, the human being, owe no oath or allegiance to the Corporation of Canada. There are no longer any you're no longer bound by corporate acts and statutes then at that point. Rather, you live by the law of the land or common law, and you, or you can live by your own society's law if you've formed your own society within the Dominion of Canada. And as long as those laws that you have in your society respect the life, liberty, and property of others, and respect your fellow human beings, set it up properly within the right paperwork that you have to send to the government, and you'd be good to go. All three options have benefits, depending on your personal situation. So we encourage you to learn more about those various options and determine what path would help you best to defend your rights. I know that myself, I'm still a corporate citizen. I'm an artificial person. My income relies on having an identification, right? So I've chosen to stay within the system and learn my rights, or corporate privileges, sorry, learn my corporate privileges and help others who are staying in the system learn how to fight for their own as well. Marcel here is not in the system. He has gone through the steps of claiming a child of God status, served a notice of understanding and intention to claim a right, and lives as a sovereign person on the land. And you can feel free to ask him more questions about that in the question and answer period. I know that the first time I heard all of this information, I found it very complicated and a little bit overwhelming. What do you mean I'm two types of person? How can acts and statutes not be laws? To understand these principles, you need to study them very thoroughly. We encourage everyone to do their own due diligence so that you understand the differences, know your options, and can exercise your rights with law enforcement officials of any type. But how does this apply to cop watching? That's why we're here this weekend. We're talking about cop watching, focus on anti-police brutality and promoting police accountability. What do the principles of lawfulness and legality have to do with that? Police and other law enforcement officers enforce acts and statutes on people without explaining to them what they are or how they apply to them. Peacemaker Society believes that Canadian people are waking up to the truth that human rights are given up in exchange for corporate privileges via government-issued identification that acknowledges only corporate persons and not human beings. As more people learn this truth, many will stand up for their human rights. We are compelled not only to educate people on these truths, but to defend the rights of those who have not yet learned and about how these truths apply to them. Peacemaker Society has an oath that our founding members have sworn to. All members have the opportunity to take this oath themselves, but it's not required. The excerpt of the oath that drives us to take up this defense goes as follows. I am my brother's keeper, a keeper of peace. My guiding principles are love, compassion, and truth. I have a duty of compassion to my fellow man. I'm fulfilling my duty by exercising my rights. I defend guaranteed human rights, the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to property, the right that all are created equal. With this in mind, Peacemaker Society has launched an advocate patrol program. Patrols actively approach all types of law enforcement and provide them with educational material explaining who we are and what we believe is the truth about acts and statutes enforcement. As well, our patrols are there to help human beings who are having their rights violated by acts and statutes enforcement. Similar to Copwatch, we actively patrol downtown Winnipeg. We keep an eye out for enforcement officers who are violating human rights. You know, when you see the red coats, move along, you can't sit here for no particular reason other than the person is sitting there. Okay. While we do not yet have video recording devices, we do have audio recording for all situations. We inform all parties that they are being audio recorded, and we ask for identifying information such as badge numbers and names so that we can identify these officers afterwards. Peacemaker Society advocate patrols gain consent from the person being approached or harassed by enforcement officers to act as lawful advocate layman representatives on their behalf. Once we've gained this consent, we speak on their behalf and we defend their rights. We provide the officers involved with written information and verbally inform them that a law enforcement officer who's not able to distinguish between acts, statutes, and laws, or who represents acts and statutes as law, is guilty of gross negligence. We also let them know forcing a human being to enter into a contract they do not wish to enter into by forcing them to show legal identification creates a fraudulent contract. We educate them that a free human being does not need to ask permission or obtain permission by submission from any corporate entity to engage in any activity that does not violate the life, liberty, and property or rights of others, and therefore they have no reason to act on that human being involved. Now, mostly we've had encounters with red coats so far. Myself personally, I've encountered some police officers that I've informed them of this information. Everything has gone fairly smoothly so far. We have had threats of arrest at one point, but for the most part, it all gets smoothed out once they've read the information. We also have proactively gone into the Downtown Biz office, their management office, spoken with managers there and given them this information and explained it to them. And so hopefully when they see us coming, that helps decrease some of the turbulence in those encounters. But what I'd like to do right now is I'm going to play an audio recording for you. We put some pictures to it just so you're not bored. But we're going to play an audio recording of one of our patrols encountering a Downtown Biz patrol who's harassing someone who's just sitting. And about halfway through the recording, you'll hear a manager comes up. They call a manager in. And so some of the information is repeated at that point in time, but you'll get to hear the entire encounter, and then we will open it up to Marcel for questions.
Recording this for audio purposes. Actually, under Acting Statute, unless you've seen ID, has every right to be here. You have no authority to tell him to move whatsoever. Here's your rights, bro. You have every right to lay there if you want, buddy. We'll be around to help protect you guys, because he's committing fraud. He never saw your ID. He has no proof you're a legal person. You're a man. You have the right to lay there, bro. Is it okay if I advocate for you? Can I stick up for you? Is that okay? Yeah? Okay, I have permission. Under Peacemaker Society, I'm an advocate. You have no authority. You haven't seen ID. There is no legal joiner between you and him whatsoever, and you're fraudulently attempting to commit it. Fact, corporate law, you're a corporation. Can MTS tell him to move? You're committing fraud. You're committing fraud through improper process, and I have it all, and he's given me permission to advocate for him. We're recognized by the government. You should move along. He's seen no identification. He cannot prove this is a legal person under acts and statutes. They are not law. They're given the force of law. He has no authority to tell him to move, and he's empowered me to be his advocate.
You just tell him to get up.
He doesn't have the right. He doesn't have the right to interact with him on any level. He was telling him he doesn't have the right to lay there. That's what he was in the process of explaining.
I said he can't be sleeping.
Yes, he can. Yes, he can. Acts and statutes are not law. You have no authority, buddy. Yes, he can. As a man in the Dominion of Canada under common law, he has the right. You're quoting bylaws. You're ignorant.
He can't sleep in public.
Okay, you're grossly negligent. You're committing
That's
fraud, which is a corporate rule. Black's Law Dictionary. Look up city. What's the definition of city? A corporation. You're incompetent. No, there isn't. Black's Law Dictionary, buddy. You're as soon as he quits trying to commit, can you guys back up off me a little bit, please? A little personal space. I'm protecting him. You're violating his rights as a man. He interacted with him, and I am interacting on his behalf. He gave me permission. I'm a lawful advocate right now. I'm a layman representative. I know the law. I have rights. You want to get cops here? Call them. I'll have you charged right now. I have proof all of it. No, you're violating. I don't have to call them. You're disturbing the peace. I have the lawful right. You're committing corporate fraud. You need to leave him alone.
I'm not disturbing any peace.
Yes, you are. Did he disturb you? Did he come? Did you ask him to come talk to you?
I was calling for a crime.
Exactly. He's not indictable offense. Life, liberty, property, and rights. That's common law. No, because you're ignorant. You're wrong. I have a fee schedule. If you wish to continue contacting our society, fee schedule is $2,000 an hour to talk to you.
Okay.
$2,000 an hour. You're personally liable.
All right.
I have your name from before.
You also have it.
Fee schedule like a doctor.
Okay.
I'm a contract for hire. So $2,000 an hour. Now you can talk.
Okay.
I'll be billing you personally. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a bylaw to not sleep here.
That's a corporate rule.
Yeah.
It has no force of law over a free man in the Dominion of Canada.
It's Canadian law.
No, it
Made by the
isn't.
city,
No,
too.
Canada Incorporated and Dominion in Canada are two separate entities. Canada Incorporated is registered in the United States. That's what all ID is under. It's a bankrupt corporation. 1925 Estates Act, as a competent heir, I have the right to have dominion as well as to stick up for my brothers. You are violating natural law and common law, which is superior to your bylaws.
Okay.
They are a foundation to you, which when you act unlawfully negates your lawfulness.
You being recorded and on.
So are you. Audio. Good for you. You are wrong. I'm right in law. I'm fully liable. Sue me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Sue me if I'm wrong.
Explain again what you said.
Okay, I'll calm down. Action statutes are not law, bro. This is what this explains, okay? You do not have the right.
Okay. Now, what do you have?
Okay, just read it. It's on there. Online, we teach it all for free on YouTube.
So what's your site name? I'll just look at it and see the rules.
It's Peacemakers. It's on the back here. If you just, it's right here.
Okay.
And we have video. We're not against you guys. The regulations set you guys up.
Okay.
I know I get all passionate. I care about you guys. When we start recording, same thing with police. They're setting you guys up. As a peace officer, if you witness someone committing harm, life, liberty, property rights, or committing fraud in contract, those are all indictable offenses under common law, natural law. You have the right to act. As a peace officer, unless you first-hand witness him cause harm, you have no authority as a peace officer. Everything else is corporate contract because Canada's bankrupt. They gave all the rights to the Uniform Commercial Code. It's tied to our currency. Because we register everything, you're a bankrupt corporation under that debtor society. Within that, you give up all human rights for corporate privilege. Acts and statutes are corporate privilege. They are not common law or natural law. Our society is recognized as unregistered, unincorporated, and separate from that.
Okay.
So we operate with full liability, commercially speaking. You guys all operate as limited liability, and because you're limited liability, whether you're a lawyer or you guys or anyone with corporate ID, it means commercially speaking, just commercially, I'm not talking intelligence, it means in a commercial sense you're incompetent, or you'd be fully liable for your actions. So within that, we're in the process of educating you guys. We went by your head office yesterday. We're sending legal notice. In the meantime, we're doing patrol. If you see someone commit harm under natural law, life, liberty, property rights, or if he showed you ID, if you see ID, if you ask for ID first and they show it, that is the joinder. That is proof they're a corporation. They have contract, and you have the right to act on them. Other than that, if he doesn't consent, they don't know, and you're inflicting corporate law on people that don't understand it, and that makes a non-binding agreement because there's no meeting of the mind, which is what creates the fraud. But it's not you personally. You guys have good hearts. You're trying to help. Regulations aren't designed by the people in our country. It's by the corporation, which is about greed. Everything he signs in a drunk tank or anywhere becomes a security interest under international law. So he is literally the international interest and corporation, the government of Canada that says it's a government only through contract though, profit from his signature and he gets nothing for it. So you're literally raping him by his signature and money. Well, they're trying to help. I'm just explaining. You guys, I can tell you care. And I'm sorry, it's not that and even before when I was talking, I don't think you're a Nazi. It's the regulations. It's the same legality that Hitler used to move Jewish people into ghettos to take their gold, their silver. And as debtors, everything you own under any registry, from your bank account to your children, your car, can all be seized as a national debt. It's why Greece is rioting. It's why Egypt's rioting. They're internationalizing us. They're harmonizing the corporate laws. We're going to have international criminal courts above our superior courts right away. We lose 71% of our national rights when that happens. It's all corporate trickery. They don't have one valid contract. The law courts, there's no innocent plea. There's no civil court. It's guilty or non-guilty, which is a commercial court. On Dun & Bradstreet, they're listed as a corporation that trades all paperwork with charges on it as security interests. They're a for-profit organization.
Just get away. Just get away from him.
Thank you.
Call the police down here.
Go ahead, we'll be pressing charges. They didn't see ID and they're attempting to act unlawfully. You guys are guilty of gross negligence. You're commercially incompetent. I'm fully responsible under commercial law. Call whoever, please. I would love to. I have a fee schedule. If they unlawfully touch me, they're liable too. No, I don't have to go anywhere. He empowered me to advocate for him. I'm a lawful advocate, the layman representative. No, you're ignorant and you're grossly incompetent. I have it all on audio. We transcribed it. You're on YouTube, buddy. We're sending you lawyers stuff right away, buddy. Yeah. I grew up on the streets. I learned a lot of people like you don't intimidate me for nothing, buddy. I learned a lot. Yeah, I did a lot more than you. You're on video, audio again, just so you know. This is the manager I'm speaking to, who's threatening me with police when he's acting unlawfully, as are his agents. You guys are the ones who are liable, not me. I'm acting peacefully. I didn't threaten you. I didn't break the law. I didn't disturb the peace. Call whoever you want. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. You're arbitrarily trying to violate his human rights. Call someone. I'd love to. I'm going to call my society right now, bro. I'll get them down here, too. We have lawyers, too, buddy.
I'm not doing nothing.
No, they're trying to violate you. Don't worry. He's a corporate officer.
I'm okay. I'm not doing
He empowered me to stick up for him. You guys are harassing him arbitrarily. I'm recording all of this. Hey, they didn't see ID, so they can't prove he's a legal person. Acts and statutes only have force of law over legal persons. And so within that, they're fraudulently trying to create corporate contracts. This explains how that works. We teach it for free online. We already noticed your office. It's fine. You're already liable, dude. I have you on audio. I'm Marcel, co-founder of Peacemaker Society. I don't use the legal name. Try it. I'm not obstructing anything. You're grossly negligent in committing an unlawful act. Yeah, we will. We will. We will. Hi. I've been empowered as a lawful advocate for a man. The manager guy here who's incompetent nursing is threatening me with police. They're calling me. So if they do unlawfully arrest me, I'll need either you or if you can call Craig to bring the police get me about. And I've been empowered as a lawful advocate, so they have no ground to stand on, and they're acting outside the law. They think they're right, and we'll handle it that way.
Where were you guys today?
Do you wish to interact with him? I know, I'm friends with all of downtown. You have no idea who I am. Doesn't matter. I know all these guys by face, bro.
Well, we think you're friends.
You're violating their right corporately. It's irrelevant who knows who. Because, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're challenging whether I know these people and have the right to stick up for them. And the way you phrase your question, I don't think you are. You're two-toned and two-faced. He empowered me, and I saw him getting picked on. It's irrelevant. He's a flesh and blood man. That's his title under the Dominion of Canada. What's the definition of a name? What's the definition of a name? Yeah, it's a legal person, which is a corporation, first and last. He's a man. He has a family given name. You're attempting to commit fraud. Okay, I'll call you from jail if I'm there. Okay. You guys approached him. He did not wish to contract, and you fraudulently tried to tell him to move. Yes, I did. Yes, do you want me to prove it? This is how ignorant you are. I'll prove it to you right now, buddy. Watch. Because people like you, you're not wasting your time. Not at all, buddy. Whatever, you're ignorant, buddy. Because people like you, the fact you think you're right, morally appalls me to the point. 326-995-1993, buddy. We're a recognized society. You guys are acting unlawfully. I called and hung up. They called me back. I just showed you my phone, dude. You're psychotic. You're delusional, buddy. Yeah, I have phone records. I have you. What's your name? What's your name?
I don't care.
What's your name? You're a public officer. You have to give me your identification. 115, that's your number? Okay, good. It'll be in our notice.
Perfect.
It'll be in our notice. You guys are wrong under the law. Yeah, and now you're mocking me. The manager's mocking me with that condescending tone. He's a criminal committing fraud. Gross negligence is equal to fraud.
Are you making a threat to me?
Yeah, no, I'm informing you. No, it's on audio. You're committing gross negligence. I have it on audio. Are you ridiculous? You're on audio. I didn't... Good try. There's witnesses. I have it on audio. You're delusional. You're delusional. I told you the fact you're committing gross negligence, which is equal to fraud. I'm informing you you're incompetent. That's not a threat. It's only a threat if I'm right, which means you're a criminal if I'm right. Sue me if I'm wrong. No. Good for you. You look like a bit of a Nazi. Good for you, yeah. Yeah, well, that figures. That's why you're comfortable with the legal debtor system. Yeah, you commit fraud just by writing their name down and entering it into the computer. Yeah, you do. The reality of the system that you guys use, that is. Again, you just 115. He doesn't think that's the truth. We'll deal with all notices. It's fine.
Are you joking? Yes, I am. Yeah, go.
I'm equally disgusted with you as you appear to be with me, so
I'm not
good for us.
I just feel sorry for you.
I feel sorry for you that you actually think you're the good guy. Nazis were civil servants, buddy. They thought they were helping too. Because you guys are just the mechanics of evil working in our system, buddy. Because you're threatening to arrest me. You threatened me. I'm standing up for his lawful right, and you threatened me, buddy. Yeah, you're the guy.
I just tried to call the police.
Well, I'll call them. Good. Yeah, you acted like you're all right, and I'm going to jail or something, buddy. I have it on audio. I'll transcribe it. You're on YouTube from yesterday, buddy. You think you're so smart. We have the public on our side. We're all through Canada. You're the old system, buddy. Yes. Can I do you still want me to advocate for you or no? Do you want me to stick up for you? Is that still okay? It's okay. If you want me to go, I can go. I'm just trying to help. Okay, brother. No problem, buddy. Okay, well, he released me from it. He gave me permission before. I will let him. We're still going to be around all day. Here's our info. You can call us if you need us. And because of all of this, we'll...
Not all of our experiences go quite that volatile. I know some of my own experiences in patrolling have gotten pretty heated, but for the most part, they tend to leave the people alone, at least, that we're trying to defend. We shift focus a little bit in some ways, and I would say I've never been in an experience where I've encountered, whether it's police or redcoats, because I've been involved in encountering both, that I've never been arrested for it. In the long run, some of them do thank us for the information, and the more officers that we encounter who have heard of some of this before, because we're encountering more and more all the time, the more they begin to appreciate and have an understanding of what it is we're trying to teach them and what the boundaries are of peace officers and accident statute enforcement officers. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcel. He can answer some of the more technical questions surrounding this. I don't have that knowledge. My skills are very basic, but we'll go ahead and...
Starting the advocate patrol for probably another month or two. I just happened to move into the downtown area about 3 weeks ago again to open another community food bank for our society. And I just happened to be walking through downtown. My cell phone has audio on it. It's a new phone I got, neat little feature. I just talking to the community. We give out what is a peace officer all day. Anyone I pass, I've lived downtown before. I know a lot of the community. They appreciate the info. And some people I had just given the info to not even minutes before, and the initial guy that I was speaking to in the audio recording is someone I noticed 5 minutes before of exactly how this works. He explained to me he's a law student, they don't teach him any of that. He was proud of his job, and this is 5 minutes before this happened. So if I sound a little defensive, I was just so appalled that for 2 years I kind of moved out of downtown, and I've been studying and working 14 hours a day, watching nothing but experts in their fields on law, legality, cases that worked, programs that worked, food programs, organic food, farmers, how they own their stuff or don't. And it's so crisp in my mind at this point because it's so clearly defined when you actually really study it, that for me walking and seeing a redcoat or police officer act on, especially a First Nations man who's just trying to lay there, who has committed no crime, is no different than 2 years ago I saved a woman from getting raped in a hallway because she was naked and the guy was trying to drag her back from the apart. They are raping people commercially. I cannot walk by and let that happen. I'm going to contain myself here. Sales background, okay. But within that, it's emotional, and we just care, and this happened 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7 days ago. We had a week-long of interactions. We have about 7 to 12 recordings total that are all on YouTube. We just displayed this one because it just textbook kind of showed through natural circumstance what rights you have. They're bluffs, that one, they threatened me with arrest. 2, the manager tried saying I threatened him somehow, like making a public spectacle. They tried all their little tactics, and it just really proves they're full of crap. You know, if you know your rights, you stand your ground. Once you file your paperwork, don't just run out and do it, okay? That's foolhardy. Don't just jump in a car and try and drive without figuring out how it works a bit first. But really, the information works, and it applies to Copwatch and what they're doing, because the one example I'm going to leave before I open it up to questions is with the football stadium opening. They're using a lack of parking as an excuse to set up roadblocks that police officers now, unless you show identification, you cannot enter that neighborhood. Yesterday I was listening to a workshop where an attorney was talking, and she's talked specifically in New York about how they seize entire blocks right now, currently, where they don't do a search warrant on one house, they do it on the whole neighborhood. They have people with telescopes in your window, and this is right now happening in the States. Under NAFTA, Security and Prosperity Partnership, and CETA, with what they're trying to do now, they're harmonizing corporate Canada, where the United Nations, if you try and operate as a man or woman and back your own currency with gold or silver, they will come in and they will blow you up all day. And we're not safe because we're in Canada. They've shifted all labor into China through the North American Free Trade Agreement and the highway that they're building from Mexico up to Winnipeg, and that's what Centerport's about. All these things are happening. There's an agenda behind it to assault human rights, so there's permanent corporate control. In past, it wasn't a problem because you could become a refugee or go take some sort of defensive status in another nation. This corporate legality is over almost everything now, and they're at the point they're not even pretending it's not there. That's what happened at G20, arbitrary. They're setting precedents. Once they set a precedent, they can do it, and they will do it again in the future. It's not all day, every day, but it'll get to the point that it is, and that's what happened in World War II, and they're using the exact same corporate process. So what you have to understand is that what we're potentially looking at, if people don't individually claim your unalienable rights, everybody, whether you stay in the system and fight corporately and just understand how it works, or if you become a creditor and you just kind of mess with them, they send you bills and you're like, proof of contract, show me the valid signature on a valid contract that shows I owe you a penny. You know, you guys are all sitting here, I could say, y'all owe me $5 grand. Where's the proof of that? There has to be some sort of proof in the interaction for there to be any bill. So in closing, you know, World War II will look like a walk in the park compared to what's going to happen to the entire world. And Canada, we've been branded, whether it's genuine or fakely, as being the defenders of everyone. We stand on guard for thee. And whether the framework in our government truly believes that or not. Jeffrey Young actually really taught me something beautiful that helped me kind of come to terms with this whole system. In my life, I kind of grew up on the streets, and there's always people that talk and they don't do anything, and then there's people who do stuff, and when you're young, and in my circle, a lot of times they got in trouble for it. But the principle there is, I was always more of a person of action. Not that I got myself into trouble, but just if I said something, I did my best to try and follow through. And while the government talks the talk, they don't walk the walk, and I used to be bitter about that. What Jeffrey Young said, CKUW News Director prior to Michael, is that you gotta love posers. Posers are the ones who see, and that's what I'm equating the government to being. They're a poser. They're sitting there telling you have freedom, but they don't explain what it is, and they make sure you don't have it. And if you try and claim it, they pick on you, whether it be police, redcoats, taxes on your labor, taking your kid through CFS because you didn't have enough milk in your fridge, or whatever reason they come up with. It's not that those services aren't necessary even to some extent, but it's the fact that they're all under corporate law and they're designed in a way to attack human rights. So this is where we're employing strategies of spreading it door to door. We are not here to try and recruit you guys. We are not here to take focus off of Copwatch. We are strictly here as information, as a society for all of you, whatever capacity you want to do, whatever group you're with, whatever organization you're with. We just want to know what you're doing, when you're doing it, and encourage you to support groups like Copwatch, get involved. Become the truth to the words instead of being just talk. Talk without action doesn't help anyone on the street not starve tonight. It doesn't help any of our soldiers getting murdered in Libya right now. It doesn't help the people in Libya who are getting bombed. It's not that I come across strong on this point to any way say that everyone has to go on the front line. You know, like Shonda said, we each have different roles. I'm kind of off the radar outside the system. She's in the system, but she's our administrator. She does organization. She does a million things. This whole presentation, how it was put together, you know, she does her work in other ways. And we have people, there are lawyers who know the truth, and they still fight the system in the ways they can. Pick what you care about. Pick what's important to you and your families. And that's really the answer, is getting local communities strong in unregistered, unincorporated ways. Right now, if you try and leave the corporate system, there's no infrastructure. Okay, everything's under the corporation. Your social insurance number is your agent status. Communist countries, you have to have an agent status to get a job. So what you have to understand is that if we supposedly have this democracy, you have the right to contract without requiring their government agent status. It's human being private contract, or a lot of people, if you're freelance, that's a term that's a little more used, they still may be liable for taxes, but they go between jurisdictions and they just do their work. We've kind of twisted that into a human being private contract, wherein our society, we just don't acknowledge corporate jurisdiction. You know, we got bank accounts, sovereign association bank accounts, but we did it as an unregistered, unincorporated association. If you're registered, you're a slave. If you're unregistered, you have human rights. If you have corporate ID, you have no human rights, and they're lying to you. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the fact that charter is in it, in the Canadian Law Dictionary over there, it says a charter is bringing a corporation into existence. The fact it's a corporate charter means there are no rights. Those are corporate privileges designed to reflect human rights, so you don't realize they've been taken from you. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms also does not apply to citizens unless you reserve your human rights under the Uniform Commercial Code. As a citizen and body corporate, you have no human rights, but you can claim them back with 3 letters. We are not here to spread doom and gloom. We are a solution-oriented society. We don't focus on failures, we focus on successes. We have friends who have gone to court, in fact, been arrested and fought judges over 12 cases for unregistered firearms. They're peaceful. They did not cause harm to anyone. We're talking just hunting rifles and stuff, but they're coming after everyone. If you have guns, you can defend yourself. I don't carry guns, just for the record. I'm not advocating necessarily for firearms, but Hitler registered all the firearms, took them all away, and then Gestapo shows up, and guess what? We run your block, and most people are too intimidated at that point to fight back. You know, really, knives, guns, all of that aren't the problem. It's what you do with them. I could walk down the street with a hammer and kill 9 people. It's not that money is bad. It's not that politics are bad. It's not that any of it's bad. It's just all been taken over by a really small group of people that kind of figured out how to twist it. For example, under the BNA Act, our government is supposed to issue all credits and debts, all currency. They outsource that against regulations to private bankers. There's 2 companies that actually give us our currency. Bank of Canada doesn't print it. That's not the intent. The other thing, in just a general principle to kind of simplify this, the reason most people incorporate is to protect themselves from personal liability. You guys all know, you drive, you have your $1 million insurance, right? That protects you. If it costs $5 million, you're okay, right? You're not risking your personal assets to do that. Now, how you make it work is you get insurance for that corporation, and the insurance pays the damage, right? What this government has done is they have made you the insurance on the corporation. It's not that corporations are bad. They're great. If you want to open roads or do a business or something, you know, they serve a purpose, but they were never designed to regulate your personal life, your personal rights, your personal freedoms. When they actually created the body corporate or legal person, they created a duality that they mislead you with. By lawyers, the Black's Law Dictionary there, and lawyers will all admit this, you know, unless you're a member of the bar and you've gone through law school, they tell you you don't understand the law. You don't understand it. That's why you pay us. Law So within that, they also swear oath to the Bar Association that they cannot tell you any, at least this is my understanding, okay, I haven't seen the document, but they cannot divulge anything that would diminish the state's control over you. So they can't tell you how the corporate legality is laid over it. And this is not a corporate oath, this is a sovereign society oath. This is sovereignty. Once you swear this kind of oath, you are bound to it, and you are fully liable if you break it. So their personal freedom, and depending on which societies, everyone's heard of Freemasons, Illuminati, whatever. I'm not sitting here telling for or against, I'm not getting into all of that, but what I will say is, from people that I know that have had family that have been in those organizations, the oaths that they swear, if they break those oaths, they can be killed. You guys may remember way back Wild West movies, 2 people agree to fight, the sheriff supervises, someone's dead. Through corporate contract, if you agree to it, they can do anything to you. I've seen movies.
They actually have to get buried at the beach and allow the tide to drown them.
Yeah. And
that's the contract they signed.
Yeah.
So you get drowned.
And way back in the day, they did it under sovereign power, which is the Queen saying under God, she's the only competent heir and understands everything, and everyone else is not capable, so we're going to take care of it. The problem is at some point, way back when, they decided to incorporate everything. Their range is limited. The Queen owns the Dominion of Canada. That's the water border around our land. That's where her authority ends. As a woman on the land over in England, her authority ends on her land. They use all this maritime uniform commercial law as a way of extending that authority, but the problem is as soon as they hit another land, there's new sovereign power that takes over. They don't have the right. So they incorporate
international water laws. They weren't allowed to come over in the first place, so all the laws in Canada are null and void legally.
There's no binding contracts once you're under. They have appearance of contract, just like you have the appearance that you broke a law when they charge you and you sign the paperwork. What you don't understand, and I'm sorry if this is a little technical, I will stop right after this point and open it up to questions, is that paperwork is worth money to them when you sign it. You're generating currency or money for them. So let's say you and I are sitting here and I say, you know what, you stole my speaker and it's worth 50 grand, okay? I call a cop, I say, this guy stole it. He comes and he says, if they were explaining this honestly, this is what happens. He'd come and say, you know what, you've been accused of stealing this speaker that he says is worth 50 grand. We don't know if it's true or not, but we have this contract that he's accusing you. Would you mind just, regardless of whether you did it or not, being collateral on that? Is that okay? Would you sign that? If they were doing an honest contract, that's what they're doing. You're admitting to debtor guilt without a trial. Guilty, not guilty. Where did the innocency go? We have no civil courts. It's commercial equity courts, and they're listed on Dun & Bradstreet. They profit off of you. Everything you sign is the judge sitting there. He has 3 capacities. He's a high priest in a temple, which is where the Crown Church is involved. That's where he gets the sovereign authority to judge. Then he's also, there's a separate jurisdiction, which is maritime law, in which he's acting like kind of like a ship captain on a ship. And then there's the initial, when you come in, they are setting up a fraudulent trust. You got a lawyer, you're awarded the trust, because they can't tell you about this, you're incompetent, you're awarded the trust. And through that, you have no rights, and they just decide how much they want to make off that paperwork. And through my experience in travels, I'll never list names, because it's all very confidential, it's people's privacy, but there are powerful people that know what that paperwork is worth. They pay that amount, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is they agree on, maybe to get a deal because they do a lot of business paying that private equity court. That goes away. So there's no justice. If you have the money to pay that corporate violation, like living in a suburb, if you agree to 2-inch grass and it grows 3-inch, they can throw you in jail and they'll fine you and they'll do it all day. That is the only authority these people have. The only authority. Since 1984, the Queen withdrew her authority from the Dominion, the land, and she gave it all to corporations. So Canada had this unique opportunity in the world that no one's claiming sovereign authority or enforcing it. It's all just corporate. No corporation forced you to contract. And that's it for that. I'm going to open up to questions now. Ask away if it's related to police, great. If it's in other areas, feel free. We'll do that for a bit, and then I'm going to end just by reading our full society oath, and then just a very brief snippet, a page or two of our actual claim of right document, just because it lays out the foundation to how this works clearly in about 12 lines. We'll pause for 1 second. Do you want to stop? And I'm also going to take this suit off. I wore this to make a point. Police aren't the enemy. People in offices, in assistants aren't the enemy. They're people that wear crap like this. When I was 14, they brainwashed me that if you want people to buy your crap, you show them what they want to see. You show it. You have an agenda. You were there to make a sale. To you, to them, all you guys are the people that do our regulations. I'm not talking police. Most people, most government agencies get into it to help. Okay, but the people you're dealing with are cold people that don't care. They will kill 2 million people if they get $500 million in insurance. You know, they don't care. So all the morality issues that everyone feels divided through is all distraction. The only thing, the only color, the only game, this legal tender. Your property is registered. You spend your own slavery. You are chattel property until you send the 3 letters and claim your right. They literally own you. It's in an act, 1984. We have the video on YouTube. I'm not going to quote the act because I'll say the name wrong. But there's a reverend that did an 8-minute presentation. We have it on YouTube.
Don Bodine.
Sorry?
Don Bodine, right? Because he says the same stuff you do. He's from the States, though.
Perfect. There's so many people doing good work. I'm really bad with names too. So that's my kind of hook, line, and sinker within that. Questions, please.
This gentleman here had a question.
Yes.
I was going to get you, because there's 3 people that walked in late, I was going to quickly recap why we are corporate entities.
Yes. Oh, thank you. How, like the actual mechanics of how they do it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's 1933 is when Canada and the United States went bankrupt. Whether it's coincident or not, I'm not going to go into that. But that is when the certificate of live birth document came into existence, and that's what you sign as a parent at the hospital. The social worker comes up and says, oh, you got to register your kids, or they make it seem like you're not going to get to take it home. The doctor, what they do is, this is how they do it. This is their logic, okay? There's water in the womb, okay? There's slap of maritime law. You're not on the land, no human rights. There's a womb. Birth canal, you are being brought into existence. You're, as a woman, this is how, I don't view it this way, okay? I'm just explaining their logic and their description, and this is how doctors, they're bringing certified property out of port. You know, the birth canal. So when it comes out, the doctor does up the paperwork to register it. Under Admiralty law, a ship or a vessel, right, a body, they look at it as a vessel, which is also how you describe a ship, comes to port. So they're registering the maritime property coming onto land in a way that keeps it under their maritime system, rather than you coming into your birthright of having unalienable rights. Let me make this clear. It does not matter if you believe in God or not. Okay, the principle comes down to someone, in their view, someone has to own you in law, whether it's your soul owning your physical body and you understand you're a nation within yourself because you and God interacted and you're the only one that has the right to own you, or in their definition, they own you. Now, you don't have to claim your rights under God. You can do it as just saying under your own authority, you own yourself, and if you genuinely believe that that's your God, good for you. If you think this table is your God, good for you. The nice thing is it didn't define what the definition of God is, so I kind of used a Shakespeare quote, a rose by any other name. You know, in the things I studied in business, it was infinite intelligence. That's how they referred to it, in a way that's kind of not controversial. You can apply that whatever you want. And that's the thing, the people who actually run everything, they're all about harmony. It's called mastermind groups. You understand your own strengths and weaknesses. Wherever your weaknesses end, you surround yourself with someone who's an expert at that. You stick to what you're good at. You fill in and pull your weight in a group for mutual goals, mutual benefit, and you keep harmony. It's all about harmony. You don't get into who likes what football team, whatever. You have whatever the goal of that purpose and project is, and then you have the group of people helping to get it done. Just like this conference. You guys mentioned you have a small group of people. It's a huge conference. And that's how the world is run. And that's what they don't want. That's why politics and religion don't talk about them. They're totally related. The Crown Church is who they swear allegiance to through corporate process. And it's totally religion that runs your life, but they mess with you using corporate politics, basically. So the certificate, to get back to your question, certificate of live birth registers the birth of the corporate entity, that your child is a Rolex watch at a drug dealer of some sort, for lack of a better, just to give the analogy of basically what they're doing. You're basically saying, and again, this is all voluntary, okay? You saw how they tried to lie to me and say, oh, we're gonna arrest you, oh, you threatened us, oh, this. Because I know my rights, I just tell them they're wrong. If I sit here and tell you the sky's pink and you all owe me $10 million, you know, well, that's great, but I'm full of crap. And that's what you all have to realize, they're full of crap. They have no authority, none. Once you claim and send your 3 letters, do it properly. Now, is there risk? Of course there's risk. You know, the way that we've come up with doing this safely is when we interact with police, I first start off by thanking them for being a peace officer. I use BS sales techniques. Now, am I really appreciative of the job they're doing? In some ways, yes, because obviously if there's a serial killer, you know, not everyone's equipped to protect themselves. We do need peace officers, but they're very arrogant. You know, they sit there and look at me like, and say, oh, well, we don't know. And as you all know, you hear it, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So really, the other thing to understand to empower you is that you don't have to go to court. By going to court, you're just generating them new security interests. As you heard, when they told me to call the cops, I didn't call the cops. I don't need the police to stand my ground with them. Within that, obviously dealing with police themselves, they have guns, you don't, okay? And this is where a fee schedule comes into it. I have a fee schedule. When it comes to the point that they're gonna use force, and if I try and fight back, whether I'm right or not, I'm gonna get killed, I'm not gonna do that, right? So I'll play a game for a bit, but you reserve your rights in the paperwork, and as long as I do that, our society can bring them a fee schedule, and whatever officer created that paperwork, the one who is the signatory who signed it, he is guilty of fraud. He is personally liable. They are not protected by their insurance bonds. Now I'm going to add some credibility to that statement. I used to be a natural gas broker. For 7 years I ran all of Manitoba for those guys who come to your door and say, hi, we're going to freeze your price, blah, blah, blah. Now before you all hate me, when I first started, the way I was trained was incorrect in process. They were just saying, go up, get the bills, get them to write their name, and you got your money. And because I studied sales professionals, Brian Tracy is who I brainwashed myself with for about 10 years on audio, and he talks about not taking advantage and providing good value. So I recognized there was something wrong in that. So I just started templating it correctly, and through that 7 years I never got one complaint, and now Central Gas offers the same program. When we started, they used to sit there and argue with me on the phone as a criminal. It's the same process for the whole system. If you commit an unlawful act, whether you understand it or not, in corporate contract, you are personally liable. It's gross negligence, it's equal to fraud, you're liable to 14 years in prison, and just like a contractor, I'm sure lots of people, this will make a little more sense and ground it down a bit. If you get a contractor to work on your house and you don't pay the bill, they just put a lien on it. PPSA office, there's no court judgment. As long as they can prove they have a valid bill, they use the commercial process of collection on your personal property. Now, they can't take your house, but they have the lien until you sell your house. Now, it is that same process that you do to hold everyone in this corporate system personally accountable. If they are acting in authority in a way that causes provable harm to you, and you can audio or video record it, you have that, you keep it. As long as you activate your fee schedule, that when I said that guy owes me $2,000, he owes me $2,000. He's personally liable. We're doing the bills. I made $8,000 last week. Let me tell you, as soon as they get a bill for $2,000, collectors start calling them. He'll start driving them up. Within that, the guy in that particular one, because he quit being very aggressive with me and he actually tried to learn, I'm not going to charge him a penny. But one of the other people, the guy who I said looked like a Nazi, he actually was very aggressive and followed me for about 15 minutes after that. And there's another recording of me activating a fee schedule because he was very violating me, not physically, but right in my space, 15 minutes, stop, go, wouldn't let me go, and through that, he's going to pay all $2,000.
Could you maybe clarify, when you talk about a fee schedule, like
yes.
You're describing an encounter between the
Yeah.
police and
Good point.
the...
I'll bring it down to the foundational point to understand how fee schedules work. Right now, under your ID, you're called a contract for service. Kind of like joining the Army, right? You sign up, you get so much, this is what you get, and they determine what you get paid. With me, I've stepped outside of the system, so I'm what's called a contract for hire. I do not have any agreements that determine what my labor is worth. I determine what my time is worth. Now, it has to be justifiable, okay? Like, if you try saying they owe you $10 million an hour and your background is I don't know, let's say you don't have a background. It doesn't even matter, but it's not realistically collectible. Our society, we did $2,000 an hour because in title, okay, I'm not talking about my attitude or how I feel about things, but in title, I'm a sovereign. I'm equal in status to the Queen. What do you think the Queen would charge if they were violating her? Never mind, whatever, $2,000 an hour is a steal. We're just making a point. If a police officer, however, physically arrests me, I get $10,000 an hour. Now, it's not that I make $10,000 an hour, but the justification for that and how we present our case is how many people have died for freedom, okay? Like the government in the United States insures each soldier for $10 million. Every person they murder under a fake war, they profit $10 million. Insurance lifts you off the land and takes title away from you, and you're no longer on the land. It puts this invisible layer between your feet and the ground. And that's why you're a Mr., a Ms. This is where titles start. This is why it matters. I don't care what your titles are. I see your faces. You're all men and women to me. I straight off point though, fee schedules, yes. Being a contract for hire is like a doctor. Okay, if you miss a doctor's appointment, they send you a bill of $40. It's a fee schedule. It's just saying that you understand you're not a slave, that your time is valuable, and if people unlawfully violate your rights, you have the right to damages. That's remedy. That's security of the person. And because they are court. You guys don't care. I don't care about a fee schedule. I don't want their money. I don't care. Again, I live in a $300 a month suite, and every penny I have goes to other people. But the problem is when they violate me and they take my money, I can't feed people. You know, they're leaning on all of us in this financial sense, so none of us has extra to take care of each other. And then you need their insurance. It used to be if there was a farmer and his neighbor's barn was burning down, he'd go help because the next day his might be burning down. But then insurance comes in, puts in the wall, saying, you know what, you don't need to know your neighbor, you don't need to know him, and if anything happens, we'll take care of you. But then the reality is you go to get insurance. We had a situation with one of our members that was, you know, wrongfully kicked off insurance. Don't look for any excuse. And here's my point in regards to what freedom is. Freedom is the ability to disagree with anyone or anything as long as you don't cause harm and still be able to live, still be able to eat. Breathe clean air, clean water. That's the infrastructure. That's a free society. Right now, whether you're a PhD and you disagree with the way regulations tell you to teach and you stand up and they take away your license, you've tried to disagree and now you have no living. You have no money. When a farmer, there was a potato farmer. Potato farmer. He wasn't going to sell his crops to Peak of the Market, which is a corporation that regulates all the local communities have to sell to them at a rate. Not their rate, a corporate rate that they're dictated to so they can control market prices. That's not a free market. Okay? Because that farmer disagreed with them, they threatened him with jail if he sold them outside to anyone besides Peak of the Market. He actually put out an ad or told the press, anyone who wants free potatoes, come and get them. You know, we're told we have freedom, but what's freedom? How do you know you're free if you've never been free? And I don't like to quote movies too much. We brought a few for pop culture reference, but Matrix, you know, the movie Matrix, and I'm not quoting that in fact, but as a representation of being nothing. You're not a battery. You're an ATM machine. Your signature generates money for them under the public trust. They're trust accounts. The government of Canada is the name of the board of directors of the Corporation of Canada. You know, it's like some products say 100% beef, but that's the title. It's not that there's any meat in it. You know, it's under corporate. You can brand anything. You call it that, you know. And the Law Society, if I'm not mistaken, this is my understanding, has pretty much patented the idea of incorporating a society. If you're any other society, you're not allowed to do what they do as far as how you interact in the whole world. And again, under inalienable rights you can, but if you were to say exercise common law rights instead of natural rights, well, again, that's English. Common law is English judicial decision. You know, it doesn't have to be. It's all man-made law. And if you decide to claim your rights under God or under your soul owning your body, or just you want to own yourself and you don't believe in God, but you know you don't want a corporation owning you, it's the fundamental principle, and it goes through everything. It's why parents have to have two jobs and not be there with their kids. It's why kids are in. Please ask another question because I'm trailing. I'm sorry.
So what's the fundamental difference then when you claim your sovereign rights? Do you no longer have government identification?
You notice them with your own. Once you serve your proper paperwork, That's if you have your own society. If you're on your own, you just claim your own rights. I'll put some conjecture in there. There shouldn't be any reason you shouldn't be able to issue your own thing. But if it's the fundamental difference whether you live for yourself or live for everyone else. If all you're worried about, and that's kind of where some of the movements in this movement, they're more about moving out and going and getting some land and screw everyone and we're free and well, whatever. What I tell those groups is that's all well and good, but the corporation, if you get out of line, is still going to nuke you. If the corporate system doesn't understand what's wrong with it from the inside out, you can separate all you want, and they'll just do what they've been doing for thousands of years.
Sorry. I didn't mean to snap.
No,
that was an accident.
Does that affect your interactions with other corporate entities?
The thing that you have to understand is that for you guys, and again, maybe it's different depending on what I'm talking about, because obviously perspective is infinite in what it is. I was a really short kid. I grew up in Saskatchewan. I moved around all the time. I moved into new neighborhoods all the time with established groups of people, and because, as you guys can tell, I speak my mind, a lot of times people didn't like me, so I got picked on a lot. And all I can really say is, claiming your rights gives you a leg to fight back on. Instead of being the kid that's never studied how to throw a punch and going against someone that's really good at it, these people only care about money. You know, for us it's about our families, our human rights, our dignity, how you feel, how they make you feel, how they affect your ability to do or not do something, and whether you have to pay or not pay for it. What was your question? It's very emotional. It's not about that for them. It's just about the sale. So when they arrest me, I spent 5 days in remand over false things. I put all rights reserved, and they didn't make a penny off of me. I cost them money. When you start costing the corporation money, you're not delicious anymore. You know, when you're eating food, you like what's tasty. You don't like what's bitter and tastes like crap. You know, so by not allowing them to create security interests off of you, by not signing their paperwork, by not showing identification, by starting to put liens on them financially, not only are they losing money because they're not profiting, their department's not making anything off of you, but now they owe you. They're a debtor under that system, and that system, contracts, is the oldest law that exists. It's all that matters. That's all they care about. Within that, you all have the right to create your own contracts in your own communities, whether you do it unregistered as just settlements, or whether you do it as cities and towns, which is a corporate identification.
Right.
And that's what Ron Paul, just to list somebody credible besides, because I have one credit in grade 10, I'm not educated formally in that way, I just have a lot of factual life experience that taught me these truths. But Ron Paul, they've been working for 40 years, they reestablished the de jure republic, and this is the answer, I guess, beyond you standing your own grounds, what will come? It's going to take time, okay, it's going to take years, it's not overnight, but as we establish human rights patrols, this is my dream, this is the vision of what I would like to see happen. Our human rights patrols, we feed people, we record what you guys just saw, make it that both those guys that I advocated for, neither went to the drunk tank, by the way. They both got to go on their merry way, and because of me that night, they weren't in jail. As we all start doing that, and as people see that it works, instead of just hearing how we get defeated, more and more will do it. The way to describe the type of corporate government we have is de facto. It means it exists by fact, but it's technically incorrect, which makes it unlawful, but it's big and it's there and it's reality, so de facto means it just exists by fact. De jure means it's correct to process, and this applies to governments. It has to do with jurisdiction, law of nations, jurisprudence. If you want to research that more, you can. I lost my point. There's so much in my head, you guys. I haven't been sleeping a lot. I really apologize.
We have a question, Sarah, right?
Yeah, could you elaborate upon the parallel that you drew between a man being asked off the street and a woman being raped?
Yes. Basically, here, I'm going to use, this is a hypothetical situation, okay? Okay, all I've done is I've written under legality. The reason I equate that to being raped, okay, there's a couple of foundational principles you have to understand in what makes law work. It's about staying in honor. Honor is notice and opportunity to respond. That's due process. We always hear these words, but what do they really mean? That's what it means. And then the other thing is, let's say I'm a corporation. Okay, you're sitting there. I created corporate rules. For sitting there, you owe me $1,000. Here you go. Do you understand? You owe me that. Are you going to pay me? No. Boom! I'm commercially raping you. It's commercial rape, it's not physical rape, okay? But the reason I sounded intense in that, I had 4 guys like this up in my space, okay? And I'm a white guy who knows what I'm doing. Through living downtown, I got to know the whole downtown. I'm getting to that. Through living in the downtown community, I was welcomed into many First Nations community. I was homeless for a while back. I had a house. Doctors put me on pills because they misdiagnosed me for about 2 years. Turned me into a zombie. I got off those. I started smoking pot because I found that research showed that it helped in all kinds of ways that I'm talking about in my own research. I got my doctor to understand that that's what I was doing, and from that, someone made up an accusation, and with no proof, no nothing, police put guns to my head. Through that, I started learning my rights. In that time when I was homeless, there are people who have helped me that I knew from back when I was a teenager that I happened to run into that are in and out of jail all the time, and they taught me what it's like to have a community that I didn't know before. As long as you just work for companies, you can act however you want. When I was a top sales producer, whatever job I had as a top producer, I could be a jerk to everyone all day if I wanted, and I still got paid. In a natural community, like downtown, let's say someone sells apples, okay, because I don't want to listen to anything that sounds bad. They sell apples, okay, they're the person in that community that sells apples, you belong to that community. Now, let's say I have the attitude of the salesman where I'm a jerk because I think I'm awesome and I don't care who you are. It's the kind of attitude that a lot of people have. Not here, but I'm just saying in the public. If I'm rude to that person who sells apples, unless they're really sweet, they're not going to sell me apples anymore. Now, how I tie that into what you asked is, when I was homeless, people who just got out of jail who had 50 cents in their pocket were the only reason I ate. They were the only people that cared. Everyone with houses and cars, my own family, didn't give a crap. My own sisters didn't call. I was sleeping in the back of a car. I went into social assistance, someone who's worked my whole life, asked them for help. They said no because I had made $200 in Alberta that I had spent to get back here. Through being a person who doesn't compromise, I always view jobs working for me. If I'm the top salesman and I make them money, anyone will hire me. I don't need them. So as soon as they would disrespect me, I'd quit. In my youth, because I wouldn't compromise my dignity or sell out and work 60 hours a week and be a slave, which means I'd never see my family, I had to quit jobs 5 times a year, on average. I moved 6 to 7 times a year because I couldn't pay my bills. And this is where they ransom your dignity for your ability to survive. If you have to put up with crap from some jerk boss just for a paycheck, that's your dignity. The only reason that happens is because you are working for $10 or $12 an hour, when as a sovereign on the land, you have the right to do any lawful act. There was a law guy who really explained it good. He said, for it to be a crime, okay, you can have 100 pounds of pot in your garage, you can have a bunch of unregistered firearms, and as long as you're sitting there with them, it's a lawful right. Now, if you go and sprinkle crack in the weed and go sell it as being just weed, that's fraud. If you go and collect off someone, you're damaging them, that's harm. If you shoot someone, that's harm. But as long as you, as a self-responsible, fully responsible, not limited liability where you can go and kill people and it doesn't matter and you get off because you pay a lawyer, I'm talking empathetically thinking before you act all day, every day, and how you affect everyone around you. The personal responsibility negates the dysfunction that happens in corporate society. Natural community, you won't be able to eat if you don't act correctly. The neighborhood will kick your ass if you don't act correctly. You know, and that's where this whole secondary part to it is the PhD system. Now, I'm not attacking anyone with degrees. We have a lot of educated people, okay, it's not you guys, and good for you for learning what you do. Within that, though, the PhD system, by fact, in history, was created in Germany, was used by Hitler and his associates. His associates brought it to North America. It is designed to divide the family. It gets your child out of your community into a strange community with a bunch of strangers at 3 to 5 years old when they're forming. Plus, because they regulate you, that you have to pay for all your human rights, you shouldn't have to pay for it, you have to pay to work. So you put them in daycare. It is designed to divide communities for their profit. And what was your question again? Because I've trailed. I do that, I'm sorry.
I initially asked you to draw the parallel between rape and...
Yeah, it's a violation, it's a crime is a crime is a crime. They're committing harm, there's provable harm, they're doing it in a way that's incorrect to process. So because you're signing paperwork and it's worth money, they're commercially raping you. It's like if I dragged you by your hair out of the room because you didn't instantly pay me that piece of paper I handed you. If I were a corporation, that's what they do. And honestly what they do is, yeah, go, please.
What are these 3 pieces of paper that you have to mail?
Good question. I actually brought with, no, I have it over here. It's all available on our website as well, so you guys know. This is the one that I brought. We have a couple of binding agreements. Due process. I'm going to explain due process. So let's say I want to use the speaker, okay? You and I are equals. Let's say that's just sitting there. We don't know who owns it. Due process, for me to be in honor and keep honor, there can't be conflict. Okay, honor all comes from not causing conflict. So if I want to use this as an equal, I notice you. I'm not to ask permission, right? Equals don't need permission. You know, once you're an adult, you ask your parents for permission, right? So I'm going to notice you. I'm going to say, you know what, I believe I have the right to use that speaker. In law, here's why I feel, there's no claim, whatever your rational basis for believing that is. And with a little research in law, you put it down, send it to them. They have between 3 days and 2 weeks to answer. We always give the maximum amount of time, but let's say you don't really care about that speaker. It's just a speaker, whatever. You're like, I don't really care. You decide not to answer me back. You are now in dishonor, which means you've given up the right to communicate, because communicating is how we stay out of conflict, because we're trying to understand each other, right? So by not answering me, or if you answer in a way that has no basis in law, if you just say, well, you know, I don't own that, but I think you owe me $10 million for it, it's frivolous. It's not a real claim. You're not actually interacting properly, right? But then you didn't answer me. So now, initially in letter 1, I was just asking you questions. Letter 2, I answer those questions. I say, because you didn't answer me back, you're in dishonor. I believe I have the right to use that. I'm going to answer my question. Before I was asking, now I'm just telling, I'm answering, yes, I'm going to use the speaker. You didn't get back to me. I send it to you again. That's letter 2 of the 3, okay? And I'm going to show you an actual example. I'm just explaining the process so you guys understand why this works. Now I send you letter 2. I give you the same 2 weeks. Okay, let's say you're really busy. You don't care. You don't have the time to sit down and do these big stupid letters, right? They're a pain in the butt. That's why lawyers charge a lot of money. Then at the end of that second 2 weeks, I send the 3rd letter, which is actually the claim of right. Now, letter 1 and letter 2 set up the understanding that is equals allows me to claim a right. If I just claim a right, but I don't give the opportunity for understanding, I'm violating your rights then, right? So now I claim the right, and I send it to you. I say, I am officially under, whether it's natural law, common law, even in the Criminal Code of Canada, you can hold property under a claim of right, and you're allowed to use any amount of force to defend it, even against police. It says it in the Criminal Code. Just like, well, it says anyone lawfully entitled to possess it, but that's usually police or marshals or whoever. So I claim the right. So 30 days goes by for that claim of right. At the end of the 30 days, if you haven't objected or haven't responded with proper authority in law or legality on your position, that claim of right cures as law and is called consent through acquiescence. It just means that if you were going to be a person of honor, you would have noticed me back. Because I've tried 3 times to notice you and you don't care, you're in dishonor. Now, once that claim of right cures, it stops, estoppel by acquiescence. It means that it bars the future bringing of any charges over that issue. Now, let's say you find out 31 days later this is worth $50 million. Well, now you're pissed, right? Well, maybe not pissed. Maybe you like me. Maybe you're happy I have $50 million. I'd hook you up if you gave that to me, right? But they're a corporation. They're not going to give you nothing. They're like, no, this is $50 million. Thank you. We have, and within that, that's your claim of right. And it's not that, in fact, it instantly changes everything. Okay, they're still guns. They still have the authority, but it makes it that they're the criminal, not you, by their own rules. Now, this is a big imaginary game, okay? It's a big imaginary game of Monopoly that some spoiled kid created that we're just all stuck playing. And it's just realizing, if you don't want to play Monopoly, maybe sit down with the Scrabble table. You know, it's just choosing the game you want to play, and it's understanding your rights enough that you understand when they're acting wrong. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just read a little bit. I'm just going to read the first page of this, because this will add clarity to what you guys are asking, because I get a little babbly, which is why we have paperwork, because it's a lot more concise. This is our second notice of understanding and intent, so I'm not reading letter 1 and 2 that set up our understanding. This is an addition to our already first round of paperwork. This is our second round. It's just worded better, so that's why I'm using this as the example. And we do have a 3rd round of paperwork coming up that is more technically accurate, which is what you guys will want to use if you're going to learn from a template. But here we go. Whereas it is my understanding that Canada is a common law jurisdiction, and whereas it's my understanding that equality before the law is paramount and mandatory, whereas my understanding that a statute is defined as a legislated rule of a society which has been given the force of law, and whereas my understanding that a society is defined as a number of people joined by mutual consent to deliberate, determine, and act for common goals. Whereas it is my understanding that the only form of government recognized as lawful in Canada is a representative one, whereas it is my understanding that representation requires mutual consent. Whereas it is my understanding that in the absence of mutual consent, neither representation nor governance can exist. Whereas my understanding that all acts are statutes restricted in scope and applicability by the Constitution and/or Canadian Charter Rights and Freedoms and/or Corporations Act. And whereas in my understanding that the said scope and applicability is limited to members and employees of the government. Whereas in my understanding that those who have a SIN number are in fact employees of the Canadian government and thus are bound by acts, statutes created by the Canadian government. Whereas in my understanding that it is lawful to abandon one's social insurance number. Whereas it's my understanding that a human being in Canada have the right to revoke or deny consent to be represented and thus governed. Whereas it is my understanding that if anyone does revoke or deny consent, they exist free of government control and statutory restraints. Whereas the sovereign child of God, natural person, free man on the land, has lawfully revoked consent does exist free of statutory restrictions, obligations, and limitations. Whereas I, Marcel, Marcel Riley Bissett, am a flesh and blood, unregistered, unincorporated man living free in the Dominion of Canada. Whereas it's my understanding that acting peacefully within community standards does not breach the peace. Whereas my understanding that any action for which one can apply for and receive a license must itself fundamentally be lawful, or the corporation calling itself a government could not give it. Whereas I am not a child. These are the signatures and stuff proving we delivered it. Just let me get to the right second page here. Whereas I am a natural human being, sovereign child of God, and a free man on the land who operates with full responsibility, I do not see the need to ask permission to engage in lawful and peaceful activities, especially from those who claim limited liability. Whereas my understanding that a bylaw is defined as a rule of a corporation, and is my understanding that corporations are legal fictions and require contracts in order to claim authority or control over any other parties. It is my understanding that legal fictions lack a soul and cannot exert any control over those who are thus blessed and operate with respect to that knowledge, as only a fool would allow soulless fictions to dictate one's own actions. Whereas it is my understanding that I have the right to use my property without having to pay for the use or enjoyment of it. It is my understanding that I claim the right to collect a pension and retain ownership of any trust or birth trust that is held in trust for me or on my behalf by any government agent or employee thereof if I have paid into it. It is my understanding that peace officers have a duty to distinguish between statute and law, and those who attempt to enforce statutes against natural human beings, sovereign child of God, or a free man on the land are in fact breaking the law. Whereas I have the power to refuse intercourse or interaction with peace officers who have not observed me breach the peace, whereas permanent estoppel by acquiescence, barring any peace officer or prosecutor from bringing charges against a natural human being, sovereign child of God, and free man on the land, under any act is created if this claim is not responded to in the stated fashion and time. Therefore, be it known to any and all concerned affected parties that I, Marcel Riley Bissett, a flesh and blood man in the Dominion of Canada, do hereby state clearly, specifically, and unequivocally my intention to peacefully and lawfully exist free of all statutory obligations, restrictions, and maintain all rights to law, to trade, exchange, and barter. We go through and claim rights. This is online, so I'll let you guys just, if you want to see the rest of it. And then I'm just going to follow that up, and then I'll take more questions. Just by reading you guys our full society oath, people always want to know who you are, and even if all of this is true, they want to make sure that you're not dangerous or up to something, because we've all been getting screwed for so long. So this is our full oath. This is what I have signed, that I'm fully liable if I do not do my best to live up to. I'm my brother and sister's keeper, a keeper of peace. My guiding principles are love, compassion, and truth. I have a duty of compassion to my fellow people. I am fulfilling my duty by exercising my rights. I defend or guarantee human rights, the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to property, the right that all are created equal. We are an independent society. We are free to live as we like. We are free to do as we like. We are free to believe as we like. Blessed are the peacekeepers, call them sons and daughters of God, whatever that means to me. A rose by any other name is still a rose. My soul and physical person belong to myself and God. I'm a child of God, not a child of the province I live in. I am not chattel. I am equal to every other human on earth. I am a flesh and blood man living in a natural law jurisdiction. I have revoked consent to be represented and thus governed. I am not subject to any statutory obligations, restraints, acts, bylaws, orders, or anything like that. I'm a flesh and blood man who has the ability to choose the capacity for rights and duties. I'm entitled to equality under the law. This means we are all equals. This includes government agents. This means no one can make demands on me. It means everything must be offers. I'm engaged and dedicated to always being in a celebration of life every day. I reserve my right to uniform consent of any substance. I am dedicated to finding and having a greater purpose than myself. I will make the world a better place for me having been here. I will do my best not to add to the suffering of the world. I will strive to inspire and teach those around me who are in need. I will only speak that which I know to be true. I will remember that my talents and abilities are not the limits of what is possible. I know that the truth is the truth, even if those around me can or won't face it. I swear to this oath as a proud member of Peacemaker Society. This is the core of my heart. This is what I live by. This is who I am. You have nothing to fear from us, and we're just, not that you guys do, but just in history, lots of times people use tools wrong, and there's a movie, Caesar is the movie, it's over there. There's a guy who's in jail who talks about all these things he can do, and the guy who's considering buying him as a slave says, well, you know, why should I hire you then if you can, you know, you understand the state and how, he was confident in what we're talking about, eh? And all the guy said was not all men would use tools to evil ends. You know, and not just men, but people. It's just I'm quoting the movie. So I don't have a point beyond that. That's basically.